We are live from Covent Garden in London. It is nearly 10:30 p.m. UK time. If any of you have just clicked on this live and you don't know what you've clicked on, it's a live walk in London. We've got about 10 minutes before to start. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. So if any of you are watching the replay in the next few weeks or days, if you want to skip the hellos, you can skip the next 10 minutes. So this is a live stream, so you might hear me interact to anything in the chat. And also we could have some micro cuts. That's what happens when the signal goes funny. Now let me know in the chat that you can indeed hear me properly. You can hear and see me well. Perfect. Thank you, Tish. And welcome, Samantha. Welcome, everyone else. We've got a few minutes before to go. Hi, Laurie. Nice to see you here. Tonight, I'm streaming straight through YouTube. I'm not using any third party, any encoders. So you might want to try to keep the chat active because it disappears otherwise. So if you don't mind, if the chat is a bit inactive for a while, if you can just send me a little emoji so I know that you're still here. And it's easier for me to read it as well, so it doesn't disappear. You're very excited by the Hyde Park. Are you going to be up at 2:45? Hi, Shaz. Yeah, I didn't have much option on the timing on that one, because that's the time when those Peter Pan Cup contestants jump into the lake. No, I've not seen. That's very odd. I never see the comments from Natasha anymore. It's weird. How can you see it and I don't? But I see it when I see when Natasha tips me, but I don't see when she's talking for some reason. That's very odd. Welcome, Natasha. If you can hear me, I don't see your comments. And welcome, Marilyn. Welcome, everyone else. Yeah, that's weird, Tish. It's like if I had blocked her for some reason. Obviously, I never did such thing. Weird. Weird. Anyway, we've got a few minutes before to go. We're waiting until it's exactly 10:30. You can see Natasha's comments either, Janie? And welcome, Anne-Catherine. Nice to see you here. You have checked that people are not blocked and they still don't show up. It's very odd. It must be a bug. And last time I was on Prism Live, I wasn't on YouTube, so it had to be a bug on the YouTube side. Then it's not the third party. Anyway, sorry, Natasha. I don't know what you've done to deserve this. So we are in the back streets. We're actually on Neil Street. I didn't want to start in front of Covent Garden Station because I want to avoid those pedicabs because some of them are waiting there and they might or might not play music. So I want to be far away from them. Right, let's see what time it is. 5 minutes exactly before we start.
Come around to my interpretation.
Let me give you a glimpse of the view. And good evening, Hakan. Nice having you here. It is still quite lively in Covent Garden tonight. It is nearly 10:30 p.m. If you happen to be new to me or fairly new, let us know in the chat where you're tuning from. And welcome, Herbie. Hi, Mitzi. You had a shoe ad. I'm the one that should get a shoe ad because I'm the one walking. So we've got about 4 minutes to go. We've not done this tour. Natasha, thank you, thanks ever so much. And now I can see the tip. That's very odd. Try to say something, Natasha. Try to say hello again or whatever. It's very odd because I thanks for the tip anyway. So yeah, I've checked on my YouTube. We've not done this tour in 2 years. Last time we were here was just Halloween 2 years ago. We've been around here on the Monopoly tour, but not Covent Garden properly. And welcome, Diane. Always a pleasure to have you around. So we've got about 3 minutes to go. Nice pedicab. He's not playing any music. Good boy. You were just in the area? Oh wow, I've just missed you then. Well, that's why I do it a bit late this one, because it's an area that's very busy around 8 or 9 p.m. And you know, when it's too busy, sometimes you don't get a good signal. So that's why I schedule this tour a little bit later. Yes, I'm next to Snoopy indeed. We should be seeing a few Snoopies on Tuesday. I've not actually walked the route yet to double check, but you know, we've got a few Snoopies in London. We should see at least 3, I think, on Tuesday. And welcome Gabriella and everyone that just joined. And welcome Blistering. Nice to see you here. And Matthew is here as well. Welcome everyone. We've got, let me see, I think 2 minutes to go. Oh, thanks, Janie. That's very much appreciated. What's your actual first name, Blistering? I've seen the Snoopy trail this afternoon. Nice. We'll see some on Tuesday, and I should be rescheduling Fleet Street as well quite soon. So we'll see some more on that tour as well. Right, let's see what time it is. 1 minute to go. Jamo. Or maybe Ramo, if you have any Spanish people in your family. Oh, Jamie, okay. Right, it should be time now. Let's see. It is indeed 10:30. So without further ado, let me flip this camera around and let's go. So we're heading down towards Covent Garden Station. We are on Neil Street. Some of you might remember on the parallel street, that's where there used to be the St. Giles workhouse. You know, the workhouses, those accommodations for the very, very poor that you might know from Oliver Twist. And you know, in Oliver Twist, the superintendent is very mean and he's refusing to give him more soup or food. Well, at the St. Giles workhouse, the superintendent, who was indeed very mean, he was jailed actually. He was jailed for manslaughter, because what happened is, in late Victorian times, there was a mother of three struggling in the cold, in the winter. She had three little kids, and one night she turned up, and he was like, "No, you're drunk." She wasn't drunk. Maybe she was a bit cold and frozen, or maybe the little one was sucking all the energy away from her nipples. Eventually, he admitted her. But the next day, you know, they had to work very hard at the workhouse. The next day, she was picking up rope for hours, and she fell asleep. Then she was discharged, and she managed to stay with her sister for a couple of weeks. And then eventually she ended up on the streets again with the three kids. One was a toddler, tiny boy, and it was snowing or raining and freezing on the streets. When she tried to go, well, she actually tried to go to the Strand Union Workhouse. It's a few minutes away, but they were full. So when that happened, usually they gave you a note to go to the next workhouse, and you had to be admitted, you know, if they had space, of course. So she came with her note, with her three little ones under the rain and everything, and she met the same superintendent, naughty, mean George, his name was, and we don't know what happened. Did she trip, or did she was she looking tired? We don't know. But it was like, "No, you're drunk again," and he rejected her, and he was like, "You know what? I'm gonna call the police because you're drunk." She wasn't drunk, and the police officer turned up. And he was like, "No, she's not drunk. I'm not taking her to the station." And the superintendent was like, "Yes, she's drunk. You better take her. I'm gonna report you." And the police officer was young and new, so eventually he took the family to the police station when they agreed she was not drunk. And but by that time, the little toddler had been in the rain and in the cold for over 3 hours. Eventually, they had to admit them at the workhouse, and the little one died. So very sad case, but luckily the mean superintendent ended up being tried and found guilty of manslaughter. He was jailed, not for long, for 12 months, I think, but see, those mean superintendents, they did exist. And actually, Charles Dickens, we'll see where he lived at some point in a few moments. He was probably inspired by the Strand Union Workhouse when he wrote Oliver Twist. Very blurry. Ooh. Well, hopefully the signal would get better down here. I was in a little street. Can you still hear me, though? We have been here before. Usually the signal is good here, but you know, the weeks before Christmas, the pubs are busy and stuff, so who knows. Anyway, this is Covent Garden Station. It is a Leslie Green station. A lot of the station on the Piccadilly line are from Leslie Green. The architecture is quite typical of his style. The station is from the beginning of the 20th century. And guess what? It is haunted. There's a ghost inside. Quite a few people have witnessed some apparitions. Is it still blurry, though? The ghost story really came out at Christmas time, actually, 1955. Most of the sightings were in late November or December, so it's very much of a ghost, a Christmas ghost. So he could be in there today. And what happened is one of the staff, Jack Hayden, it was Christmas Eve, and you know, no one really wants to stay very late on Christmas Eve. So he was wrapping up. He was closing the station. He was actually counting his penalty fares he had given through the day, when he heard someone behind the door of his office. So he went and opened the door. He believed it was a customer that had been locked in at the station. You know, it happens. So he wanted to let the guy out. As he opened the door, he was face to face with a tall guy wearing a grey coat, like a Victorian coat with a top hat. And the guy vanished into thin air. Now, the next working day, on Boxing Day, Jack Hayden told all the staff, and then the staff started to see the ghost as well. And it became quite bad. Eventually, people decided to ask for a transfer. No one wanted to work at the station, so they actually called Leicester Square Station, where there was a guy there, a staff that was also a psychic. So he came. Hi Lee, and welcome everyone that just joined. The psychic from the other station came to have a séance at Covent Garden Station, and the medium didn't get much apart from 3 letters, TERR. And he also drew a little sketch of the ghost. He was able to see him himself, and some of the local people said TER. That might be for Terrace, William Terrace, a Victorian actor that had been murdered locally. I'll show you where that was in a moment. And the sketch actually matched. A few of the staff that had those ghost sightings, they were presented with the sketch, and they were like, "That's him, that's him." They saw the picture as well of William Terrace. We don't know for sure why he would be hunting the station, because when Terrace was famous, the station did not exist yet. But I'll tell you a little bit more about Terrace in a little while. For now, let me show you the Bridge of Aspiration. This beautiful bridge up there, it is art as well as architecture. It is called the Bridge of Aspiration because on the left-hand side you've got the Royal School of Ballet, and on the right-hand side it leads into the Royal Opera House. And every graduation, 5 lucky or talented winners, they get a job at the Royal Opera House as a dancer. Now, the Royal School of Ballet, that's where Billy Elliot goes to learn how to dance in the musical. And you know what I've seen in the news recently? The actor that plays Billy Elliot in the musical, I don't think it's the movie, I think it's the stage musical. He plays old Billy. He actually went to school here at the Royal School of Ballet himself. He was granted compensation, £34,000, because he was, a few years ago, he had gone to the police station, Kennington police station, to pick up a helmet that had been stolen from him, as well as checking for a scooter, an e-scooter. And apparently at the police station, he was kind of looking into the backyard. He just wanted to check if his scooter was there. And some of the police officers believed he was up to no good. They dragged him by force and they searched him by force. And one of the police officers repeatedly stepped on his foot. And of course, he's a dancer, he needs his foot very much. So he had an ankle injury that never fully recovered, apparently. So he was awarded a lot of compensation after the incident. Well, 34,000, if his career is really over, that's not actually a lot. But I think some people argue that he had a bit of an incident before. On the same ankle. Anyway, are we better with the picture now? Is it still blurry or is it any better? Let me know in the chat. Let me show you. There's a little Chanel Christmas light here. Right, I wonder if it's actually because it's YouTube. Well, anyway, let's keep going. There's nothing else I can do. So yeah, remember last year we had a Chanel partnership on Bond Street. This time it's over here. Yeah, Snoopy stole my signal. Hopefully it will get better. But who knows? So all of this is sponsored by Chanel.
Sagune with mine.
It's clear on your phone and blurry on your TV. Huh. That's odd. Well, my next tours are on Prism, so hopefully Prism is better in that matter. Let's see. Right, now we are in Covent Garden Market, to tell you a bit more about the history of the area. Covent Garden, it used to be a garden. It was managed by it belonged to the church. They used to grow fruit and vegetables to feed the monks of St. Peter's Church, also known as Westminster Abbey now. And eventually, you know, when Henry VIII broke up with the Catholic Church to create his own church, the Church of England, that's when he confiscated a lot of the land that used to belong to the church. So he actually confiscated all the land over here, and he gave it to some friends of his, the Russell family, the Earl of Bedford. And the Russell family, eventually, they decided to develop it. They contacted their favorite architect, Inigo Jones. Jones was very much inspired by Italy and those piazzas in Italy. So he designed a beautiful square for the nobility. At the time, those great homes, they were not allowed to be subdivided. So it was really a spot for the rich. But a bit later, when we had the Civil War, you know, when we chopped off the head of Charles I, let's say that the nobility, they were not very comfortable in London. A lot of them moved outside of the city for the time being. So this area became a bit empty. And we are now inside with the beautiful Christmas deco. So it became a bit empty, and the Russell family, they had to find another way to make money. So that's when they've decided to have a market, a fruit market. You might be able to read, I don't know if it's still blurry, but you might be able to read it says Apple Market here, because that's the space where they used to sell apples. And eventually, though, because you had workers coming for the market, the last nobles, they left as well. They did not want to be mixed with the working classes, so they left. And it became so when it went from being a very posh place to being a working class area. And then you had all those coffee houses and a lot of prostitution as well. Mole King was a lady entrepreneur that was managing a lot of the brothels, and she was also a bit of a money launderer for the local traders, and then it became full of pickpockets and all that. So it went from one extreme to another. And eventually the market became redundant in the 60s, and they had many plans of what to do with it, because the Covent Garden Market actually moved to Vauxhall, the new one. And nowadays it's no longer a market. We still call it a market, but it's more like a little shopping gallery, really. Your favorite apple is the pink lady. I like a pink lady. They're very sweet, though. Right, let me check if Santa Claus is still here, because we had a Santa Claus. Yes, they're still here. Perfect. I hope the picture is better. Is it still blurred now, or is it decent anyway? Right, there we go. You've got Rudolph over here. Getting better. Perfect. Thank you, Robin. And Santa Claus. So that's all made with Lego. Cool. Let's go and see the Christmas tree. So the Christmas tree over here, it's probably one of the most beautiful. It's not as tall as the one we've got in Trafalgar Square, but it's much better in terms of its quality. It is the same farm, so it's a British tree. They're grown in the Midlands. It is the same farm tree that supplies the royal palaces. Well, at least Windsor and Downing Street as well. Not sure if it's if they have the same one at Sandringham, but yeah, beautiful tree. It's usually about 55 feet high, and 30,000 lights are placed on it. So yeah, beautiful tree. Now let me show you St. Paul's Church. Not to be confused with St. Paul's Cathedral. The cathedral, it's of course the cathedral where you had the royal wedding, you know, with Charles and Diana and all that. This is St. Paul's Church. It's the Actors' Church. I'm not going to show you because you have some. I wanted to show you a little plaque just there, but I don't want to disturb those homeless guys. There's a little plaque that says it's also the spot where they had the first puppet show. That's why there's a pub behind me called the Punch and Judy. And St. Paul's Church, sadly, was also a place where they had a lot of dropped babies. At the time, especially in the 17th and 18th century, this place was full of prostitutes. So you had a lot of unwanted babies, sadly. And if you looked at the burial record of the church, there's a lot of dropped baby. So that's a bit sad. It is known as the Actors' Church because they were the only one doing burials on a Sunday, and the actors didn't have a play on a Sunday, so they could get buried here. Hi, Pauline, and welcome everyone that just joined. They in the graveyard. We can't go in the evening; it's closed. But they have a little. It's like a little hut, a little blue hut. It looks like it's like the size of a telephone box. It is not. It was for the night guard, because it was a little graveyard that was very often targeted by the body snatchers. If you are a regular in my tour, I'm sure you know exactly what the body snatchers were. They were those people stealing the newly buried bodies from the cemeteries. Because at the time we had a lot of demand for human bodies. And we had two illegal schools of anatomy around here. One in the Square and potentially one in Charing Cross. So that's why the little graveyard here was very much targeted by those body snatchers. Anyway, yesterday it was somebody's birthday. Do you know who? She would have been 250 years of age yesterday, if she was still alive, of course. Do you know who I'm talking about? Exactly, Tish. It is indeed Jane Austen. I'll show you. There she is, on the £10 note. For a long time, we didn't have any ladies on the £10 on any of the notes. Well, apart from the Queen, of course, she was indeed a lady. But apart from the Queen, we had mainly men. So it's nice to have a lady on the £10 note. So there's a little plaque for Jane over here. She's not actually lived here very much. It was her brother that lived here, but she did come and stay every so often. Let me show you the little plaque. You won't be able to read much, but it is right up here that she came on stay. Probably not for very long, just every so often for a couple of years. She was much closer to her sister Cassandra than she was with the brothers. She would have frequented those streets. I think that's at the time when she was already famous. She was an interesting character herself. We don't know why she never married. I suspect she might have been gay. But who knows? Foxy friend over here. That's my favorite. Yeah, happy birthday, Jane. Or belated birthday. Oh, lots of pedicabs, but they're nice. They're not playing music. If some of you have no idea what I'm talking about, on my last tour, there's one of those pedicabs, you know, those, you might call them rickshaws. We call them pedicabs in London. Sometimes they play loud music. And for me on YouTube, it's terrible because I can get a copyright strike. Copyright claim, strike is worse. And I did on my last tour. But luckily, it was sorted fairly quickly. YouTube was able to mix the, kind of blur the background noises. So I could regain the monetization. Anyway, I told you we'll talk about terrace again. Well, on that little street we're heading to now, in the late 1920s, at some point there was a chap walking down the street when he spotted a guy right in front of him, dressed like very out of fashion, like proper, like Victorian, you know. I parked my car over here. No, just kidding again. It's not mine, but I wouldn't mind if it was. So yeah, he spotted a guy that was quite just out of fashion, and he was going to be like, "Hey, mate, what are you wearing?" But before he could address the guy, he had vanished into thin air. We believe now it's the guy was also shown a portrait of terrorists, and he was like, "Yeah, that's the guy I saw." Now, this street here, we know exactly why terrorists would be hunting the site. It's because, sadly, it is exactly where he was killed. Now, William Terrace, as we mentioned earlier, was a Victorian actor. He would have been, he was famous for a long time at that point. He would have been like the Hugh Grant of today, you know. He was on stage everywhere in Victorian times. He would have played Robin Hood, Hamlet, and all that. And one night, so we're actually here at the back of the Adelphi Theatre. This is the stage door over here. William arrived in a cab with his friend. He was like, "Hold on, I'm gonna get the key." There's a little platform for him up there. And then someone came through from the other side of the street with a big butcher's knife, and he actually stabbed him in the back. Oh, thank you, Diane, on the pitch, on the pair. Thank you very much. So he was stabbed in the back, but for the onlookers, it actually didn't look that bad. It looked like if he had just someone tapping his back, you know, and then he turned around and the guy stabbed him again in the front. Then Terrace realized he was like, "Oh God, I am stabbed, arrest him." Sadly, the guy that had stabbed him was someone he knew. It was another actor called Arthur Prince, and Prince was an actor that was not very successful in his acting career. He was not getting much work because he had started to act heretically, and Terrace was taken to his dressing room up there, but sadly he died. And people were expecting him on stage because that was like 7:20 when the play was meant to start at 8 p.m. And so that's why Terrace might be hunting the street on the station, but it's not the only place he is hunting. First, before I tell you about the other place, let me show you the restaurant. We are now in front of Rules. It is the oldest restaurant in London. We have a lot of old pubs, but in terms of actual restaurants, Rules is the oldest one we've got, 1798. I love it because I don't have to remember the date, it's written right there. And it's been in the same family for quite a while. And it's been used, I've never had food in, I've never been inside actually. But it's been used into a few movies. One James Bond, I think, or maybe two, but at least one. And Downton Abbey, a few, in several episodes actually. They do a lot of game birds and proper British food. Now let's get back to William Terrace. He lived with his wife and kids. Actually, he had a son and a dog, a little fox terrier. And at 7:20 p.m., his wife is on the sofa, you know, and she had the dog on her lap. When the dog went crazy, he went barking like crazy, like if he was looking at something no one else could see, you know. And the wife was like, "What do you see? What do you see?" Little didn't know that's the very time when Terry's died. So he might have made an apparition to his dog. Who knows? When he died, it was a big deal. Even Queen Victoria sent a letter of condolences. Some of you might remember we went to see his grave at Brompton Cemetery. Thousands of people turned up, you know, to see where he had been buried. And years and years later, there was a young actress that was performing at the theatre. And at some point, she's in her dressing room. She was trying to take a nap just to rest a little bit before the play, when she heard a very slow double knock on the door, like knock, knock. She didn't open because she wanted to rest. And then she felt the room like almost like shaking, and she said she felt a very cold embrace. Little did she know it was actually the dressing room where a lady called Jessie Millwood used to stay and wait for Terrace. She was actually Terrace's mistress, and apparently when he came to visit his mistress, he used to give a slow double knock on the door. So who knows? And it is said, according to his daughter, actually, the last thing he had said before to die was, "I'll be back." And his son-in-law, actually, when he came to see the body, he said at some point he heard a voice that said, "You'd be a fool to think there's nothing after death." So, you know, it's interesting. There are so many sightings or even just noises, but there are so many from so many different people that you start to think, yeah, there might be something there. Anyway, we're back at the market. Nowadays it's bright and it's very, you don't see any Londoners over here, well, apart from me, but it's very touristy here. You'd have some people coming for the day, you know, going to the theatre and stuff and then coming to Covent Garden, but no Londoners. So it's nice and bright and everything, but back in the day, it was very dangerous. It was full of pickpockets, full of brothels as well. If you wanted to go from, let's say, from the theatre to the brothel or whatever, you wanted to pay a little boy, you know, with a lantern to take you around. And it was actually so bad that eventually they had to have the Bow Street Runners. That was the first police force around here. And the theaters, they were very different as well. The theaters, they were, you know, being an actress at the time was not exactly a nice job. It was hardly any better than being a sex worker, to be honest. Actresses had not been allowed on stage for a very long time. They had only been allowed in the 17th century. Before that, they were only male actors. You'd go and see Romeo and Juliet. Juliet was going to be a transvestite. Ladies couldn't read anyway. How could they learn their lines? Actually, even Nell Gwyn, you know, the famous Nell Gwyn, Charles II's mistress, she was an actress over here. Her mother had a brothel over here. She couldn't read. Someone had to read the lines for her so she could remember them. Nell Gwyn, she was actually quite proud of her background in the sex industry. You know, she was a very funny and very witty young girl. It is said that one night when she was leaving Covent Garden, she was on a horse carriage, and you know, people didn't like. Well, people didn't like the mistress of the king, because one of them was a Catholic. We didn't like the Catholics at the time, you know. It was Louise de Cornouailles, the French one, that was a Catholic. And at some point, a horse carriage is being surrounded by those people, like hitting the carriage because they knew it was the mistress of the king, but they believed it was the French one. And apparently, Nell opened the door and she was like, "You mistaken, my dear people. I'm the Protestant whore." So she would always be quite witty and quite funny. She started as an orange seller girl in the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane. Now, remember what I told you about Santa Claus delivering magic mushrooms? Well, look, mushrooms again. What are they called? Amanita. Amanita? Well, those are the toxic ones, the one that the reindeers might be eating and then pissing the toxic hallucinogenic material. So you see, when you see Christmas decos, you see mushrooms everywhere. Now, as we mentioned earlier, those streets are very, very dangerous. And that's where they had to create the Bow Street Runners. They were the first police force as such. Before that, you had some parish constables, but they were often they were quite elderly, so they were not able to run because everyone had to do it every so often. But sometimes people would pay someone else to do their parish duty, and the system didn't work. And you had those thieves catchers. But they'll be paid to catch the thieves, and very often they actually worked with the thieves. And then when you had to go and see a magistrate, you had to pay them anyway. So it was full of corruption. So the system didn't work. Let me show you this beautiful pub here. The Coach and Horses, the little red one. There was a murder in there in I think 1940, very beginning of the Second World War. It was a Canadian soldier we didn't know he was a soldier at first, but he turned up with a balaclava and a gun, and he pointed his gun towards the barmaid, and he was like, "Paper money." And the barmaid had no paper money, he only had coins. It was the beginning of his shift, and he was like, "Paper money, paper money." And he managed to shoot himself in the arm. We don't really know how, but then it was much easier to identify him because he had an injured arm. And he sadly killed the barmaid, a guy called Morris. So quite a sad story. Then he gave himself many excuses. One was that he was in love with a young girl and he didn't have enough money to marry her, and blah blah blah. But he was identified fairly quickly because there was only one punter in the pub, and he spotted the Canadian army uniform on his shoulder. Anyway, this is the site of the former police station and magistrate court. Nowadays it's a hotel. And in the little street there's the little police museum. Okay, let me cross over to give you a view on the Royal Opera House. Bear with me. There we go. So this is the Royal Opera House. It used to be, originally the Royal Opera House was inside of the Drury Lane Theatre, the oldest theatre in the area. We're heading to there now. And you know what happened at the Royal Opera House? 1782, there was a lady, Miss Fitzherbert. She died out of laughter. She was watching a performance. At the time, they had a lot of performances with characters cross-dressing. So there's this character coming on stage. He was dressed as a lady, and apparently he was hilarious. So Miss Fitzherbert couldn't stop laughing. And she was giggling and giggling so much she had to be taken home. But she just couldn't get the picture out of her mind. She kept laughing and laughing and died. It's a good way to go, if you ask me. There are a few characters in history that have been recorded as dying out of laughter, but you'd have to remember that at the time they didn't have a great knowledge of heart attack and stuff. And laughing at the end of the day, it is a form of exercise. So they probably did have a heart attack as they laughed the ass off. But yeah, interesting story. There was a murder in there as well. I think it was the mistress of the Earl of Sandwich. Because the Earl of Sandwich did exist. Anyway, let's go and see the Theatre Royal Drury Lane. It is, well, it's some would argue it's the oldest running theatre in the world. It's been rebuilt, I think, 4 times, so it's not the original building. The first one was in the 1660s, and it is here that they were experimenting with, when you burn a big block of lime, you get a very powerful light. That's what they used on stage. So that's how we got the expression to be in the limelight. And theaters were often worried about fires, but you had all those lights that were very dangerous at the time. This is another pub named after Nell Gwyn. You can see Nell up there on the little plaque. So Nell was the mistress of the king, Charles II. At the time, you'd come to the theatre to see the play, of course, but not only. You'd also come to the theatre to see the king flirting with Nell or whoever it might be. It was a bit like the reality TV of the day, really. And you'd have to imagine in the 17th century, the theatres were very different from today. If you were done in the pit, you might be spat on or urinated up against. There were hardly any ladies apart from the sex workers. And Nell was an orange girl at first, but at the time, people could pay. They could pay a few pennies to go and see the actresses in their dressing room dressing, And the theatre is it's haunted. They have a few ghosts, actually. You might have noticed in London, we take our ghost stories quite seriously. So much so that when you go on the Wikipedia of the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, on Wikipedia you've got those different sections, like history, date, accidents, sources, whatever it might be. Well, here you've got one for hauntings. They have, at least 2 ghosts. One of them is a ghost with a tricorn hat and a grey coat. Some believe that he may have been murdered in there. There was, apparently they found a little bricked up alcove or a little room that was bricked up in the wall, and they found the body in there with a dagger in the chest. And there was another murder. There was an actor that killed another actor as well inside. So the ghost could be any. There actually are a few ghosts anyway. You've got the guy with the tricorn hat, and there's also allegedly a ghost that's quite nice to the actors. He's only hunting from 9 to 5, so the audience wouldn't see him. Well, unless they do the matinees on the Sunday, maybe. And he's apparently, if an actor is not on his spot, or the ghost actually pushes them. And they get a Christmas cake every year. There's an actor, 150 years ago, that put down in his will that he wanted to keep enough money to deliver a Christmas cake every year at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane. I don't know if it's still running, actually. You might have run out of money eventually, but at least for decades they had the Christmas cake from an actor. Right, we talked about Dickens briefly earlier. Let me show you the spot. Well, one of the many spots where he lived. He lived in quite a few locations around London, and he drank in quite a few pubs around London as well. Right over there. Oops, sorry, it's a bit windy. My phone is going funny. See the little blue plaque? That's where Dickens worked and lived for the last, I think the last 11 years of his life. And you see those bricked up windows. That's of course the window tax. I'm sure most of you know by now, but we had a tax on windows at some point, because it's at the time it was very difficult to know how much people made, you know. So because windows were quite expensive, they decided to tax the windows. And of course, no one really likes to pay much taxes, so people started to break up their windows. And it was actually quite bad, because the window tax lasted until Victorian times. And at the time, you know, London was a bit overcrowded, and you had a lot of slums, and you had a lot of families living all together, cramped into one room. And if you couldn't open the window, you know, when you had tuberculosis and those diseases, they were a bit like COVID, you know, they spread through the air, or the droplets of water in the air. So the window tax actually killed. Anyway, Dickens was, of course, is like the man that revived Christmas, you know, with the Christmas carols and all that. He, when we think about Victorian Christmas, you know, it's very difficult not to think about Charles Dickens. Anyway, let me show you the Lyceum Theatre. So, beautiful building again. This is here in Covent Garden. We are in the middle of theatre land, really. You've got theatres everywhere. Behind the block next to my right, you've got the one with Mamma Mia as well. This is the Lion King. And guess what? The Lyceum, it is haunted as well. The story here started in the 1880s, when a couple came to see a play, and they were sat on the balcony. And so they could see the people underneath them. And during the play, apparently, at some point, they spotted a head on a lady's lap. So the lady sitting like 2 meters down from them, she had a head on her lap, and the head was staring at them. Somehow, they were not too scared. You know, in the theater, you've got special effects or whatever it might be. They just thought, okay, when the interact happened, we'll run and ask the lady how she's got a head on her laps. But as the play finished, they couldn't. The lady ran away, and they couldn't actually go and ask her. And that was it for many months, or years even. Then they didn't think much of it, until eventually one day they were invited into a house in Yorkshire, and they're having dinner when they spotted a portrait on the wall. That was the head. They recognized him. That was the same guy. So they confronted the host. They were like, who's that head on the portrait? And the guy was like, oh, it's an ancestor of mine. He was beheaded. He used to own a lot of land around Covent Garden. So yeah, they recognized the ghost on a portrait. Now, I love to tell you those ghost stories, but sometimes I have my doubts. In this area, in a perimeter of maybe, I don't know, 500 yards, I know at least 3 ghost stories with a story of a portrait, and they recognize the person on the portrait. So sometimes you think, did they somehow got mixed up over the years, or even did the journalist mix them up at the time, you know, because in Victorian times, the journalists, they loved ghost stories, you know, because it would sell a lot of newspapers, because people used to believe in ghosts a bit more than we do today. And also it's a good marketing for any pub or establishment, you know, because if you have anyone knocking at the door, being like, hey, I'm writing a book about ghost stories in your area, you better have a ghost if you want to be featured in the book, you know. So yes, sometimes for some of them I have, oh no, man, they've just turned off the lights. Yeah, they probably turned them off at 11. Well, anyway, we saw it the other day. That's Tinkerbell, the Christmas light.
No.
It's okay. That was only one light we've missed. I had specially scheduled it a bit early so we would see them, but I've been talking too much. Anyway, let's cross over when we can. Still beautiful. Yeah, we can still see them. I don't know whether it's actually Tinkerbell, but it looks like a fairy to me. We are now on the Strand. I shouldn't call it the Strand, it's actually called Strand, but everyone calls it the Strand anyway. Strand, it's from German language, because back in the day here we were on the beach. The Thames River was much larger than it is today, and apparently Strand means beach in German. So that's where the name comes from. At the time of the Saxons, you know, the Saxons, they were the first one that kind of built up this area. You know, the city of London is behind me, and they were often coming down here with their boats. You know, instead of using quays, they were stranding their boats on the beach area. There are a lot of homelesses these days, many more than they were a few years ago. I'm not putting them on camera, but there are a lot of gentlemen sleeping here, and it's sad to see that there are more than before. That's the Strand Palace Hotel. There was a murder in there as well, actually, a sad one. A gentleman from America that was he was deaf, and he was probably suffering from some probably early signs of dementia, and he basically beat his sister to death one day in the hotel. He was convinced that they were trying to steal his money. So yeah. Anyway, let's go and see a very famous hotel you might have heard of. It is the Savoy. The Savoy, beautiful hotel. It was opened in the I think 1880s, and there are two dark stories linked with the Savoy. The first one, it is the story of Caspar the cat. Caspar is a little wooden cat. Let me show you Caspar with the little bush here. So see the bush is cut in the shape of a cat. That is Caspar. What happened with Caspar is that, well, about 10 years after the hotel opened, they had a dinner in the restaurant, and they were 13 at the dinner table. Now see, the cab is driving on the right inside here. This is the only place in the UK where we drive on the right. It's allegedly because ladies wanted to come in the horse and carriages straight from the theatre and get out on the right inside, but I think it's just to confuse tourists. Anyway, back to Caspar. So they had a dinner, and they ended up being 13 at the table, and the guests found it very funny. They thought it was actually hilarious, and they started to joke, the first one to leave is the first one to die. And one of them left. His name was Joe Ruth. He was a politician from South Africa. And a week later, he was gunned down in his office in South Africa. So the hotel was ever so sorry when they heard about the incident, and they decided it would never happen again. So after that, when they had 13 people at the table, they used to sit a member of staff with them, which was very awkward, as you can imagine, to have a waiter sat at your table for the full duration of the meal. So eventually they decided it was way too awkward, and they commissioned an artist that produced a little statuette of a cat. Caspar, let me show you the picture. And they would sit Caspar at the table with you. For many years they did that. Apparently Winston Churchill was very fond of Caspar the cat. I think they still have it, but they don't, as far as I know, they don't really put it on the table with you anymore. Ah, Paddington is here. Oh yeah, that's where they played the Paddington musical, at the Savoy Theatre. I'd love to see it. In the Paddington costume, there are some actors suffering from dwarfism. Well, I say they. There's only one actor. They're not hiding the three of them inside, but you know, sometimes they rotate. And two of them are actually ladies. Anyway, let's say bye to Caspar. And the other dark story, it is the case of Marguerite Alibert. Marguerite was a French lady. She was a courtesan. She had quite a sad life herself. She, as she was young in Paris, she was basically sent into a convent because she had there was an accident. She was minding her little brother, and he was hit by a horse carriage and he died. And her parents blamed her, so that's why she was sent into a convent. And then she fell pregnant at the convent. The father was allegedly an aristocrat. She didn't want to say who. And she got kicked out, of course, by the nuns. And then she ended up on the streets of Paris selling her body. But not like a standard prostitute. No, she was a high-class courtesan. She was starting to be quite famous, and she would have affairs with very powerful men. And she ended up dating a gentleman you might have heard of. Edward, his name was. Prince Edward, the Prince of Wales at the time. So we're talking about the young Edward VIII. And he was very, very much into her for many months. That was through the First World War. And he sent Marguerite a lot of letters. Some of them that were a little bit too much. Not only very sexual, but also he was criticizing his dad and other members of the royal family, as well as saying horrible stuff about the war effort and all that. And after maybe a year, he got bored of her, and that was it. Now, a few years later, in I think it's 1927, Margaret had moved on. She was dating an Egyptian prince. Well, he wasn't actually a prince, but he managed to pass as a prince family. She married him, but the relationship turned sour very quickly. And they wanted to separate, but she couldn't, and then he took another wife, and eventually one day they were visiting London when there was a huge fight. And I'm just crossing over because I don't want you to hear the music from the pub, because I don't want to have a copyright issue again. So there was a huge fight between Famille and Marguerite in the Savoy, so in the hotel. And eventually, about 2 a.m., she took a gun and she shot him in the back. He died. There were witnesses. She was holding the gun and everything. She did get arrested, of course. But would you believe she got away with it? At the trial, they tried to make it look like she was a victim of domestic violence. And she accused Famille of doing some horrible sexual stuff to her, immoral stuff that she wouldn't agree with. And let's face it, they also used racism a bit, because of course he was from a Muslim family. And would you believe she was acquitted? Now, what we do now, we think we know now, it's that it was actually a royal cover-up. Margaret is long dead, but she had a little girl, Raymond, when she was a teenager, and then Raymond's son is the one that told the press, not recently, but not that long ago. We don't have the letters, but it is said that according to her diary, she made a deal with the British government. Because those letters were, any other young man, it would have been fine, but the Prince of Wales saying some horrible stuff about his family and also criticizing the war, they couldn't risk it being published. And she had told the government, if I'm not acquitted, those letters are going to be published. So we now believe that the government had the letters, had her acquitted somehow to get the letters burned. Anyway, this lovely little pub here, the Coal Hall, it used to be a bit further down the street. It's quite a cool pub, but there was a murder upstairs. An infanticide. Again, we talked about that in some of my tours. At the time, when you had a child out of wedlocks, it was very difficult for ladies. Sadly, Britain was a bit late in that matter. At least in France, ladies could give their babies up very easily. We have something called ex-birthing. You go to a hospital, you say, when I give birth, X, they don't record it, they just take the baby away. There were many places in France to give your baby away to the Catholic nuns or anything. Here it was much, much harder. And those young girls, if they were from upper classes, then their chances of marriage was ruined. And if they were from working classes, like the lady here, she was a waitress, she lived above the pub, then once you had a baby, you had no work anymore. How could you work and take care of the baby? So it was a very difficult situation for them. That's why we had issues with like baby farmers and stuff, like ladies pretending to take the baby away for adoption, and they would actually kill them. Well, here the little barmaid, she was sharing her room with another barmaid, so she didn't have much privacy anyway. Everyone knew she was pregnant, you could see, but she was like, no, I'm not. And at the time you had those chamber pots, and one night she had the baby in the chamber pot and she hid it under her bed. She had actually strangled her own baby. At the time, even if you had a miscarriage, you'd have to call a doctor and show them, because otherwise you could be accused of concealment. And the other girl was like, "What have you done? Show me." And she was like, "You'll have me hanged." And yes, sadly, she had killed her little one. There were traces of strangulation and everything. So quite another sad story. And see, that's the Savoy Theatre here. So that's where they're playing Paddington at the moment. I know the Prince and Princess of Wales, they've gone and see Paddington with the kids. I've seen the photos of Catherine and William with the Paddington actor. Anyway, I'm sure some of you remember where we are. We are on Farting Lane. It's actually called Carting Lane, but every tour guide in London would call it Farting Lane because of the gas lamp in front of me. Today it's a fake. Today you might not see well on camera, but today it's electric. But for many, many years it was gas, like all the gas lamps in London. But this one was a bit special. This one was powered by the methane from the public sewer. We are right by the river there. That's the River Thames in the distance. And we've got the public sewer that was, of course, created by Joseph Bazalgette. And poo, or sewage in general, when it ferments and when it gets rotten, you've got some gases coming out. Methane. Well, that's a gas that can be used for lighting. So the Victorian engineers, they had already noticed that they had to do something with that gas. It had to get out anyway, because otherwise you could have explosions and stuff. So they used sewage powered lighting. So that's why everyone calls it Farting Lane instead of Carting Lane. So that's why. And this is the back door here of the Savoy. So I'm guessing if they have any celebrity guests, they come down this side, so no one would know. Right, cool. that's gonna be the end of the tour. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions before we go. Is the picture better now, by the way? Is it normal, the quality, or was it blurry all along? Let me know in the chat. Hopefully it was only at the beginning. Thank you for coming today. It's always a pleasure. Oh, it's normal. Okay, perfect. So that was only the first 10 minutes. Okay, cool. It's fine. Okay, perfect. Good. Well, you know what? It's actually not bad because, you know, on Prism, when the signal is a bit dodgy, it cuts and it goes, you know, if YouTube does blurry image but the sound is fine, I wonder if it's actually a bit better than having cuts, you know, because when you have a lot of cuts, you can't follow the story or anything. So it might actually be better. Anyway, thank you guys. Thank you, Mitzi. Thank you, Rose. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. If you want to see a bit more of me, oh, thank you, Pauline. That's very, very much appreciated. So next Tuesday, so the 23rd, we're doing it's very windy down here. We're doing murders and punishment, Christmas murders and punishments. And I'm gonna move down here because it's a bit brighter. And Christmas Day, so early morning, Christmas morning, 8:45 in the morning. If you are awake, because I know a lot of you in Northern America, it's going to be the middle of the night. If you are awake, come and join me in Hyde Park. We'll go and take a look at well, hopefully, if we don't get kicked out, because, but we'll try to go and take a look at the people jumping in the lake in the freezing lake on Christmas Day. So that's the Peter Pan Cup. I've never seen it. I've never been there at that time on Christmas Day. It's been every year for decades. And then we'll have a little walk in Kensington Garden and the rest of Hyde Park, and I'll tell you a bit more about the backstory behind the story of Peter Pan and James Matthew Barrie, the author. So hopefully I'll see you then. If I don't see you, if you cannot make it to any of those tours, have a great Christmas and a great New Year's as well, because I guess the next tour is probably going to be after New Year's Eve. But hopefully I'll see you on Tuesday and next week. Thank you guys. Have a great evening or a great morning, whatever time it is for you, wherever you are in the world. And if any of you drop me a little tip on PayPal or buy me a coffee, that's very, very much appreciated as well. So I cannot thank you live, I don't see them live, but you're very much appreciated. Yes, happy holidays everyone. Cool, have a great evening. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.